Welcome to the first of my GCSE Media Studies revision guides. This one is to the first of your film close study products, Daniel Blake. First off, where does this feature in your exams? Well, it will be in paper 1, that's media 1, and it will be in section B. So should this come up, because it will test you, section B will test you on any two of those media forms: radio, music video, newspapers, online, video games, or film. So you'll get any two of those could come up in the exam. Okay, so it will be in section B, and importantly, it will test you on your knowledge and understanding of the film industry, not audiences. So as I say, it says just on media industries, and what kind of things do you need to know about? You need to know about the whole area of funding for films, the effects of ownership, film rating and regulation, the global film industry, and you will also be expected to make explicit comparisons with Doctor Strange, your other film CSP, particularly if you get a larger 20-mark question. What's Daniel Blake about? Well, there is no expectation for you to watch the film. I recommend that you do. Firstly, it's a very good film, and secondly, it does give you in terms of context and the kind of films that Ken Loach makes, I think it will give you a good idea contextually. So it is worth watching in your own time. What is it about? Well, it's about this chap called Daniel Blake, surprisingly. He's someone who worked as a joiner, lives in the northeast of England, and falls on hard times because he's been forced out of work due to illness. He meets someone called Katie. She's had to have been forced to move away from London because she was in a homeless shelter and has been rehoused in Newcastle. So it is a film with a political message about government austerity, which is basically the government cuts that were put in place by the Tory government in 2010. Ken Loach, the director, a little bit about him. He's known for films which explore these gritty social political issues. The film genre itself is a sub-genre, and it's called social realism because it explores issues within society that are realistic, not particularly glamorous, but realistic. Now, some films like Doctor Strange will sell because of star power, the actors and actresses that are in them. Ken Loach's films don't. They sell partly, at least, because of what's called director power, because he's such a well-respected, well-known director. A lot of people will see a film by Ken Loach and think that's going to be worth seeing. So some characteristics of Ken Loach films then. Small budgets, often employs less well-known actors, or sometimes people that aren't actors at all. Characters are usually underprivileged, whether it's because they are unemployed or come from broken homes. Films like Kes, for example, often loosely scripted. Again, that adds realism to them. So, for example, the scene in the food bank is very loosely scripted, and you can tell that. Doesn't use CGI. It's not a technique that you would use in social realism films because it's not real. And his films will often be part publicly funded, and I'll talk about funding with this film in a moment. And Daniel Blake, partly funded through the British film industry and BBC Films. He uses quite a lot of handheld cinematography. That does keep costs down, but I think more than anything it adds to the realism of the film, and that's the reason he does it. His films don't get national cinema release and often be shown in art house cinemas, smaller art centres and libraries, that kind of thing. So what is an independent film? Well, Daniel Blake is an independent film, and that's a film which is produced outside of the major film studios. So Disney, Warner, MGM and so on, they're the ones that make the big films, and that's why this film has been paired with a film like Doctor Strange. Often low budgets, have limited release, and are often more niche. Okay, have a smaller, more narrow audience. So let's have a look at the funding for Daniel Blake. The film was actually funded by 5 different participants, if you like. 16 Films, a company which is set up by Ken Loach himself. Why Not Productions. Now, importantly, Ken Loach is very, very popular in France, which is why he's got funding from this particular film company. Wild Bunch again is French. Once you get that backing in place, the UK are happier to get involved, and the BBC and the British film industry both got involved. Now, we don't know the exact cost of I, Daniel Blake. It is a modest amount, is what the producer has said. We reckon it's somewhere in a region of 2 million, which might sound quite a lot of money, but when you compare that to Doctor Strange, which cost 165 million, you can see that 2 million is, in film terms, a drop in the ocean. So the marketing for I, Daniel Blake. Traditional methods like trailers, film trailers and film posters were used, but the marketing company also used what's called disruptive marketing or guerrilla marketing, and that is some very unconventional marketing methods. Let's have a look then at some of the disruptive marketing strategies that were employed by the marketing company. They projected the film's title in its font onto the side of the House of Parliament. Of course, it has such a political message, and that's the obvious place to project that. The London premiere was attended by Ken Loach and Jeremy Corbyn, the then leader of the Labour Party, who of course would have been a major critic of the government's austerity measures, and also real protesters with their banners and placards arguing against the government cuts were in attendance as well. He appeared on Question Time, and I'll show you a clip from Question Time in a moment, in which benefit cuts were discussed. And there were free screenings arranged around the country in community centres and so on, all over the country before its main release, which really created a buzz for the film.
There is compassion, of course, with people, but it's not reflected in the government's actions. The DWP staff are under incredible pressure, and we know there are targets and expectations, and if people don't sanction the number of people they're meant to sanction, they go on a personal improvement plan. And we talked to hundreds of people who work at the DWP under your guidance and instructions, and they are told to sanction people. If they don't sanction them, then they're in trouble.
Greg, I think that's unfair to.
It's true.
I think that's unfair to the people who work in the system. It's a difficult job administering a benefits system, whatever your professional role in that is. You've got to be fair to the people, quite rightly, who are claiming benefits. You need to be fair to those who pay for them, and they have to make incredibly difficult decisions, and I think they should have our support in making those decisions. And you know, it is worth saying that
it's your instructions that's the problem. It's the instructions from the government is the problem.
I mean, it is a fictional film, and people seeing that should not think that these are the way that people are behaving in job centres.
So before the film was released nationwide, it was marketed through lots of free screenings up and down the country, and again, as I said earlier, that's the thing that created a real buzz about the film. Now, on the film's release, the marketing company collaborated with the Daily Mirror. Now, you'll know from your newspaper CSPs that the Daily Mirror has a working class readership. It is traditionally a Labour supporting paper. Now, they offered through the Daily Mirror free tickets to these screenings up and down the country. As part of the marketing, they even changed the masthead for the day, the I in Daily Mirror. This meant that by the time it actually made the cinemas, it had been seen around the country in these small art house cinemas, community centres and so on. It had already been seen by lots of people, a word had got out about it, the profile had been raised. So very, very clever and inexpensive marketing that went on here. 93 cinemas, which is very small nationally, because of the positive feedback it got, because of the buzz that had been created, it made $540,000, which is a quarter of its budget, in the first weekend, and so it was then extended to even more cinemas. So was it a box office success? Well, there's no point making comparisons with films like Doctor Strange in financial terms, because the budgets and the profits are so different. It is his most successful film in the UK, and throughout Europe it has continued to sell well, and it was a critical success as well as a box office success, winning lots of awards. It won the BAFTA for Best British Film, and it also won the top award, the Palme d'Or, at the Cannes Film Festival. The film was rated 15, given a 15 certificate by the BBFC. That was because of the bad language, sexual scenes, nothing explicit in terms of sexual scenes, but there are sexual references. There are no frightening scenes in violent terms, but there are emotionally intense scenes, the food bank and the funeral in particular. So finally, a little bit about merchandising. Now, merchandise for the Ken Loach films, or social realism films in general, not something you would expect, but I, Daniel Blake, became so synonymous with a sort of anti-austerity movement that merchandise became available and kept the film very much in the public eye. T-shirts, badges, its own hashtag, We're All Daniel Blake, was seen on marches up and down the country in the austerity years. And as I say, that really provided even more exposure for the film and kept it in the public eye. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I will do another video for Doctor Strange, which will help you make comparisons between the two.